The alien did not understand why the humans were smiling. His name was Oren, and he had been a military liaison for the Sethani Compact for 11 years. He had worked with the Velhari. He had worked with the Dross Collective. He had even spent 4 months on a border station with the Meen, who communicated entirely through smell and had no concept of chairs. He thought he had seen every way a species could react to danger. Quiet. Loud. Still. Frantic. Every combination in between. He had never seen a species react to danger by smiling. The colony on Reach Station 9 was not a large place. It sat at the edge of a dust belt in the outer ring of the Harrow system, a cluster of domes and pressurized tunnels built into the side of an iron-rich asteroid that was roughly the shape of a bent thumb. About 4,000 humans lived there, most of them miners and their families. There was 1 medical bay, 2 mess halls, a school with 37 children in it, and a small administrative block where Commander Pete Dolan ran the day-to-day business of keeping everyone alive. Oren had been assigned to Reach Station 9 6 weeks ago. His job was to observe human colonial operations and report back to the Compact on whether humanity was ready to be invited into the lower tiers of galactic trade agreements. It was the kind of assignment that most Sethani officers considered easy work. Humans were young. Their technology was behind. Their political systems were confusing and loud. You watched them for a few months, wrote a report that said they were developing but not yet ready for full integration, and went home. 6 weeks in, Oren had filled 4 reports with things he could not explain. The Keth Raider fleet had appeared on long-range sensors 8 days ago. The Keth were not a sophisticated species. They were large and aggressive, and they had spent the last 60 years doing what small, desperate civilizations often did when they ran out of options. They stole from whoever was closest and too weak to fight back. They had hit 11 human colonial installations in the past 2 years. They had taken resources, equipment, and in 2 incidents, people. The Galactic Accord had issued formal complaints. The Keth had ignored them, because the Keth were very good at ignoring things that could not hurt them. The fleet heading toward Reach Station 9 was not large by the standards of a real military power. 14 ships. 3 were what the Keth called war barges, which were basically large cargo vessels with guns bolted to the outside. The other 11 were fast attack craft, quick and lightly armored, good for overwhelming a target before it had time to ask for help. Against a colony with no warships and no dedicated defense force, 14 ships was more than enough. Oren had filed an emergency contact request with the Compact the moment the Keth were detected. He had also, on the second day, quietly reviewed the station's evacuation procedures and identified which escape pod bay was closest to his quarters. He was not ashamed of this. He had a family. He was practical. What he could not understand was why nobody else seemed worried. He had gone to Commander Dolan on the second day, when the Keth were still 6 days out. Dolan was a heavy-set man in his early 50s, with grey in his hair and the permanent squint of someone who had spent too many years staring at instrument screens in low light. He was sitting at his desk eating something out of a paper container when Oren knocked on the open door frame. "Commander," Oren said. "I wanted to discuss the approaching Keth fleet." Dolan nodded and waved him to the chair across the desk. "Sure. Sit down." Oren Saturday. The fleet will reach weapons range in approximately 6 days. The station has no defensive armaments capable of stopping even the lighter Keth attack craft. I have contacted the Compact for assistance, but our nearest response vessel is currently 12 days away. Dolan listened to all of this with the same expression he used when reviewing supply manifests. Calm. Slightly tired. Basically untroubled. "Okay," he said. Oren waited. "Is there a plan?" he asked. Dolan picked up his paper container and took a bite of whatever was inside it. "Yep," he said. Oren waited again. "Would you like to share it with me?" The commander looked at him for a moment, and something moved behind his eyes. Not worry. Something more like consideration, as if he were deciding how much to say. "We've sent a message," he said finally. "We're waiting to hear back." "A message?" Oren repeated. "You've sent a message." "That's right." "To whom?" Dolan smiled. It was a small smile, not unfriendly, but it had something in it that Oren could not read. "The right people," he said. That was day 2. On day 3, Oren noticed that the maintenance crews had started working double shifts. This was not unusual in itself. When a threat was approaching, it made sense to repair things, to check systems, to make sure everything was running properly. But the maintenance crews were not working on the station's life support, or the power grid, or the communications array. They were down in the lower levels, in a part of the station that Oren had been told, politely but clearly, was not on his access list. He asked one of the miners about it, a woman named Carla Webb who ran the ore processing line. She had short blonde hair going gray at the temples and arms that were thicker than his, and she looked at him with an expression that was friendly but not forthcoming. "Just maintenance," she said. "Nothing exciting." "What is in the lower levels?" Oren asked. "Storage," she said. He had checked the station schematics. The lower levels were listed as general storage, which was accurate, in the way that calling the ocean a large body of water was accurate. It told you something and told you nothing at the same time. On day 4, he ate dinner in the main mess hall and watched the humans around him. There were families at the tables. Children were doing something with small colored blocks that seemed to involve arguing about rules. 2 older men were playing a card game in the corner. A group of younger miners were watching something on a shared screen and laughing. The noise level was what it always was. Maybe slightly louder. Not the quiet of people who were afraid and holding it in. Just normal. He had been in 11 different conflict zones in his career. He knew what a population under threat looked and felt like. This was not it. He went back to his quarters and sat on his bunk and stared at the wall for a while. Then he opened his personal log and wrote 3 words, "They know something." On day 5, he went back to Commander Dolan. This time Dolan was not in his office. He was in a corridor near the lower access hatch, talking to 2 engineers whose names Oren did not know. When he saw Oren coming, he said something quiet to the engineers, who moved away down the corridor with the specific kind of purposeful walk that people used when they wanted to look like they were just going somewhere and not like they had been told to go somewhere. "Commander," Oren said. "I would like to speak plainly." "Go ahead," Dolan said. "The Keth fleet will arrive in approximately 30 hours. The station has no visible defensive capability. The response from my government will not arrive in time. I have reviewed every piece of information available to me and I cannot understand why this station is not preparing for evacuation." He paused. "I am asking you, one officer to another, what is happening here?" Dolan looked at him for a long moment. Then he glanced toward the lower access hatch. Then he looked back at Oren. He seemed to be making a decision, the kind that had been coming for a while. "Come with me," he said. The lower levels of Reach Station 9 were not what Oren had expected. The access corridor was narrow and the lighting was old, the kind of yellow-white that suggested a fixture that had not been replaced in a long time. The floor was metal grating over bare rock, because this deep in the asteroid, the builders had not bothered to put down proper flooring. It smelled like machine oil and cold stone and something electrical that Oren could not name. Dolan walked ahead of him without speaking. He moved like someone who had been down this way many times, stepping over a raised section of grating without looking at it, ducking slightly at a point where the ceiling dropped by a few centimeters. He clearly knew every meter of this route. They went through 2 more access hatches, each requiring Dolan's handprint and a code, and then down a long ramp that led to a section of the station that, according to the schematics, was simply a large empty storage bay. It was not empty. Oren stopped walking. He stood in the entrance to the bay and looked at what was in front of him, and for a moment he forgot every professional instinct he had ever developed. The ship filled the bay from wall to wall and from floor to ceiling. It was not a big ship by the standards of anything he had ever seen in military service, but it was not small either. It was roughly the length of a Sethani mid-class patrol vessel, maybe 30 meters from nose to drive housing, with a hull that was dark and dented in several places and covered in a fine layer of dust that suggested it had been sitting here for a very long time. Its design was angular and practical, without any of the smooth curves that modern shipbuilders favored. It looked like something built by people who had been thinking hard about function and not at all about how it appeared. Along its side, in faded stenciled letters, were the words, NGDC-7, Iron Reach. "How long has this been here?" Oren asked. His voice came out quieter than he intended. "Iron Reach was birthed here in 2094, Dolan said. The station was built around it." Oren ran the numbers. That was nearly 300 years ago. The station was built around the ship. "The ship was here first," Dolan said. "We put a colony on top of it." Oren walked forward slowly. He was not sure his legs were doing exactly what he was telling them to do. He moved along the side of the ship, close enough to touch it if he reached out, looking at the hull. Up close, he could see that the denting was not random damage. Some of the dents were old repairs, places where hull sections had been replaced and the welds were just slightly different from the original material. The ship had been hurt and fixed. Multiple times. Over a long time. And then parked here, in the rock, under a mining colony, in the dark. "What is it?" he asked. "A warship," Dolan said simply. "It looks old." "It is old." The frame is original. The guts have been updated. Dolan moved to a panel on the side of the ship and pressed his hand to it. Something inside the hull made a low sound, like a breath being taken after a long time underwater. We do maintenance every 30 years. Last cycle was 11 years ago. She should be ready. Should be, Oren noted. Not will be. It's one ship, he said. This one is, Dolan agreed. Oren looked at him. There are others. Dolan looked back at him with that same expression from the office, the one that contained something Oren could not read. Not pride, exactly. Not smugness. Something quieter than either of those things. Something that looked a little like the face a person made when they had been waiting a very long time to say something true. You'd better come see, he said. They did not go back the way they had come. Instead, Dolan led him through a door on the far side of the bay that Oren had not noticed, and down another corridor, longer this time and sloping at a gentle angle that told him they were going deeper into the rock. The walls down here were rough stone with metal conduit running along them, and the floor was solid and smooth, which meant it had been used regularly. Recently, he thought. The dust pattern was wrong for a place that was never visited. The corridor opened into a second bay. A different ship. Larger. The same dark, angular design, the same sense of extreme practicality in every line. Hull marking, NGDC-12, Grey Ridge. Beyond it, through another opening in the far wall, he could see the nose of a third ship. How many? Oren asked. In this station, Dolan said, 4. He let that sit for a moment before he said, there are 19 stations like this one in the Harrow system alone. Oren stood very still. 19. The asteroid belt is good for more than ore, Dolan said. You can hide a lot in a belt this size. You just have to be patient about it. How long have you been patient about it? Dolan moved his jaw slightly, the way humans did when they were doing quiet arithmetic. The program started in the 2070s, he said. The first ships were launched before we ever met another species. Before we had any idea what was out there. We just knew that space was big and we were new to it and we thought it would be foolish not to be ready. Oren thought about that. He thought about humanity in the 2070s, which he had studied in the basic galactic history briefings the Compact provided to all liaison officers. Pre-contact. No FTL. No knowledge of any other civilization. Just a species that had figured out how to leave their home planet and was now doing it, carefully, one step at a time. Building stations. Sending probes. Looking out at the dark and wondering what was there. And building warships. You built warships before you knew there was anyone to fight, Oren said. We'd been fighting each other for a long time, Dolan said. We knew what fighting was. We didn't know what was in the dark. So we figured we'd be ready for both. He walked back toward Iron Reach, running one hand along the hull as he passed. When we made first contact, the program had been running for 200 years. We had a lot of ships. We didn't know what the right thing to do with them was. So you hid them. We kept them quiet, Dolan said carefully. We were new. We didn't know the rules yet. We didn't know who was trustworthy. We didn't know if showing up with a large fleet was an invitation to a fight we didn't want or a protection from one. We talked about it for a long time. He paused. We decided the safest thing was to make sure the ships were there if we needed them, and to not need them. For 300 years. We're patient people, Dolan said. When we need to be. Oren looked at the ship again. At the faded stencil letters. At the old welds on the hull. At the layer of dust that time had put on something that was not dead, just waiting. He thought about the Keth fleet, 14 ships of raiders and desperation, heading toward this station. He thought about the human children in the mess hall arguing about the rules of a game with colored blocks. The message you sent on day 2, he said. Who did you send it to? The Defense Secretariat, Dolan said. To let them know we were activating a reserve unit. He shrugged with one shoulder. It's a notification, mostly. They like to know when one of the ships is being woken up. One of the ships, Oren said. You're only activating one? Dolan looked at him. Against 14 Keth raiders, he said. One is probably more than enough. Tilde. Oren did not sleep that night. He sat in his quarters with the lights at half level and thought about everything he had seen and everything it meant. He was a careful thinker, which was one of the reasons the Compact trusted him with liaison work. He did not jump to conclusions. He gathered information, checked it from multiple angles, and then reached a position he could stand behind. The position he reached that night was not comfortable. The Sethani Compact had been assessing humanity for 11 years. Not just his assignment. The entire formal assessment program, which had been running since the first serious diplomatic contact between Earth and compact space. 11 years of reports from liaison officers and trade observers and intelligence analysts. 11 years of conclusions that said, with minor variations, the same thing: humanity is behind. Humanity is young. Humanity's military is small and lightly armed and not a significant factor in the regional balance of power. He had written versions of that conclusion himself. Several times. He thought about Iron Reach, sitting in the dark of the asteroid for 300 years. He thought about 19 stations in the Harrow system alone. He thought about the program that started in the 2070s, before first contact, before humanity had any way of knowing that there was a galactic community to be part of, before anyone had told them what the rules were. He thought about the word alone. He had used it before in his reports. Humanity had developed alone, without the guidance of older civilizations, which explained certain gaps in their technological development. He had meant it as a neutral observation. Now it felt like a different kind of word. A species that developed alone, without anyone to tell them what they were supposed to build, might build things that the rest of the galaxy had not thought to build. Might solve problems in ways that did not match any existing model. Might be sitting quietly in the dark with 300 years of patient work that nobody had ever thought to ask about. He opened a new entry in his log. He wrote, "We have been asking the wrong questions." He thought for a while, then added, "We have been asking about what they have shown us. Nobody has asked what they have not shown us." He saved the entry and closed the log and stared at the wall until the station's artificial day cycle clicked over to morning. Tilde tilde tilde. He was back in the lower bay by 0600, which was earlier than he had planned, but he had not been able to stay in his quarters anymore. The engineers were already there. 6 of them, including Carla Webb, working on different parts of Iron Reach with the focused efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing because they had been trained for exactly this, even if they had never had to do it for real. Carla noticed him and came over. She had a tool in one hand and a coffee cup in the other, and she did not look like someone about to face a raider fleet. She looked like someone who had a full day of work ahead of her and was getting on with it. "How long will the preparation take?" he asked. "We've been prepping for 2 days already," she said. "Drive systems check out. Weapons are online. Life support is running. We're doing final calibrations on the targeting array." "The weapons," Oren said. "What kind?" She gave him a look that was not unfriendly but had a layer of assessment in it, the look of someone deciding how much detail was appropriate. "Good ones," she said. "Are they current technology? Or 300-year-old technology?" "The ship is 300 years old," she said. "The weapons were updated last maintenance cycle. 11 years ago." She took a sip of her coffee. "We don't leave things outdated. That would defeat the purpose." Oren looked at the ship. Its drive section was lit now, a faint glow around the housing that had not been there yesterday. Something inside was running that had not been running before. The ship felt different in the bay, the way a sleeping animal feels different from a dead one. It was not awake yet. But it was not all the way asleep anymore. "Who will fly it?" he asked. "We have a crew," Carla said. "A crew," he repeated. "This station has 4,000 people. Most of them are miners." "Most of them are miners," she agreed. "Some of them are also crew." She turned back toward the ship. "We train. Rotating basis, every 2 years. Anyone who volunteers goes through the program. It's not mandatory. But a lot of people do it." She said this the way she might say a lot of people go to the station's fitness bay, as if it were simply a thing that happened, a normal part of life on a mining colony on the edge of explored space. Oren thought about that. A colony of 4,000 miners, most of them volunteers who had signed up for life on a rock at the edge of nowhere, and a significant portion of them also trained warship crew. Training on a rotation. Every 2 years. For a ship that had been sitting in the dark of the asteroid for 300 years and had never been needed. "How long has the training program been running?" he asked. Carla thought about it. "Since before my grandmother was born," she said. "This was always part of the deal when you signed on to this station. You know the ship is here. You know you might be asked to crew it. Most people think it's interesting. A lot of them really get into it." She glanced at him. "We run simulations every 6 months. Full crew exercises. The kids on the station do a junior program. It's kind of a tradition." Oren was quiet for a moment. He was looking at the ship and thinking about children learning the junior program. Learning the layout of a warship. Learning the exercises. Growing up, going into the mines, still keeping the rotation current, still showing up for the simulations. Because it was a tradition. Because it was part of the deal. You are not afraid, he said. He meant it as a question, but it did not come out that way. Carla thought about this seriously, the way she had thought about everything he had asked her. I'm not thrilled about it, she said. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I hope the Keth turn around when they see what they're heading into. She paused. But afraid? No. We've been ready for this since before any of us were born. It would be strange to be afraid of something you've been ready for your whole life. She went back to work. Oren stayed where he was and watched the engineers move around the ship, and listened to the low hum coming from the drive housing, and tried to understand what he was looking at. What he was looking at, he thought, was not a secret weapon. It was not a trap or a deception. It was something much simpler and much stranger than either of those things. It was what happened when a species spent 300 years being quietly, patiently ready. By midday, 8 crew members had reported to the lower bay. They arrived in ones and twos over the course of the morning, coming off shift in the mines or the processing lines and heading down the access corridor with a particular walk of people who were switching from one kind of work to another kind of work. They changed into flight suits in the equipment room off the main bay. They ran checks. They talked to each other in the low, focused way of people who had practiced this enough times that they did not need to raise their voices about it. The crew captain was a man named Lou Bassett. He was 44, average height, with dark skin and reading glasses pushed up on his forehead that he never seemed to actually use. He had been running or processing shift logistics for 12 years. He had also been doing the crew rotation on Iron Reach for 8 of those 12 years. He shook Oren's hand when Dolan introduced them and then got back to work almost immediately, which Oren found he appreciated. There was no performance in any of this. No drama. Just people doing the thing they had trained to do because the thing needed to be done. Oren sat in a corner of the bay for most of the afternoon and watched and took notes. He was not sure who would ever read the notes. He was not sure his previous reports had prepared anyone for what he would need to say now. He kept writing anyway. At one point, Carla came and sat near him during a break. She had a water bottle and she offered him one, which he accepted. You've been quiet, she said. I'm thinking, he said. About what? He considered how to answer. About the fact that I have been writing reports about humanity for 2 years, he said, and none of them mentioned any of this. She nodded like this did not surprise her. Nobody ever asked the right questions, she said. He looked at her sharply. Someone else said that to me recently. It's a thing people here say, she told him. She looked at the ship. We're not trying to trick anyone. We never have been. We just answered what we were asked. Nobody from any of the assessments or the trade talks or the integration committees ever said, do you have warships stored in your asteroid colonies? Nobody ever said, how long have you been building military vessels and how many do you have and where are they? She turned the water bottle in her hands. We figured, if they want to know, they'll ask. If they don't ask, maybe they're not ready to hear the answer. And if we had asked? Oren said. She looked at him with a steady expression that contained no hostility at all. Just honesty. We would have told you, she said. We don't have anything to be ashamed of. We built what we thought we needed. We maintained it. We kept our people trained. We hoped we'd never have to use any of it. She paused. We still hope that. But hope isn't a plan. Oren thought about that for a long time. He thought about it while the crew finished their preparations and Iron Reach came fully online for the first time in 300 years, its drive filling the bay with a low vibration that moved through the floor and up through his feet and into his chest. He thought about it while Commander Dolan stood at the entrance to the bay and watched his station's ancient warship breathe, with an expression that was more complicated than Oren had words for. He thought about what it meant for a species to spend 3 centuries getting ready for something it hoped would never come. The patience of it. The discipline of it. The absolute, quiet commitment of generation after generation of ordinary people, miners and engineers and children doing a junior program, all of them carrying forward something that nobody had ever asked about. Above them, in the mess halls and the school and the corridors of Reach Station 9, 4,000 people were going about their day. Children were arguing about the rules of a game. Old men were playing cards. The noise level was what it always was. 14 Keth ships were 9 hours out. In the lower bay, Iron Reach hummed and waited, the same way it had been waiting for 300 years, the same way the whole fleet had been waiting, in the dark, in the rock, in the silence that no one had thought to ask about until now. Oren closed his notebook and looked at Commander Dolan. When the Keth see it, he said, What do you think they will do? Dolan thought about this the way he thought about everything, with a calm that came from not being afraid of the answer. I think they'll stop, he said. And then I think they'll leave. He glanced at Oren. And then I think word will travel. That's usually how it works. And if they don't stop? Dolan looked back at the ship. At the old hull and the new weapons and the dust that time had put on 300 years of patience. Then we show them what the dust was covering, he said quietly. The ship hummed. The lights in the bay were steady and warm. Somewhere above them, a child was laughing about something. Oren wrote one more line in his notebook. He wrote, I think we have been very wrong about how small they are. The Keth fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at 0312 station time, which was the middle of the night by the artificial clock that Reach Station 9 used to keep its people sane. Oren was not asleep. He had not been asleep for most of the night. He was sitting in the small observation room on the station's upper level, a room with a curved transparent wall that looked out at the stars, and he was watching the long-range sensor display that Commander Dolan had given him access to. The numbers on the display changed when the Keth arrived. 14 contact signatures, exactly as predicted. They were moving at roughly 1/4 speed now, the way predators moved when they had decided they had already won and were taking their time about it. He opened his communication link to Dolan. They're here, he said. I know, Dolan said. His voice was calm. Not the calm of someone pretending. The calm of someone who had already done everything he needed to do and was now just waiting for the next part to begin. Is the crew in position? Has been since midnight, Dolan said. Lou wanted the extra time for a full systems check. Iron Reach is ready. Oren looked at the sensor display. 14 ships. He looked at the single contact signature that represented Iron Reach, sitting in the launch bay cut into the underside of the asteroid, sealed and dark and ready. 1 against 14. Commander, he said. I want to be there. In the bay. When it launches. There was a brief pause. You know you can't be on the ship, Dolan said. I know. I just want to be there. Another pause, shorter this time. Come down then, Dolan said. Tilde. The lower bay was different at night. Or what passed for night on a station with no windows. The overhead lights had been dimmed and replaced by the amber work lights that the engineers used during sensitive operations, and the effect was that the whole space felt smaller and closer, like the inside of something that was breathing. Iron Reach filled the bay the way it always did, but it felt different now. The dust that had been on its hull yesterday was mostly gone. Someone had wiped down the forward sections, not all of it, not as a cosmetic gesture, but the sensor panels and the forward camera housing and the nose section where the docking indicator lights were. The parts that needed to be cleaned to work. Lou Bassett was at the main control panel on the side wall, running through a final check with 2 of his crew. He nodded at Oren when he came in but did not stop what he was doing. The others barely looked up. Carla Webb was there too, not in a flight suit, standing off to one side with her arms folded and a coffee cup in her hand. She moved over to stand near Oren without saying anything, and the 2 of them stood together and watched the crew work. After a few minutes she said, quietly, First time we've actually done this. Launch the ship. Oren asked. Launch the ship for real. Not a drill. She looked at Iron Reach. My grandmother was on the crew rotation here for 20 years. Never launched for real. My mother did 12 years. Never launched. This is the first time in 300 years anyone's actually taken it out. Oren looked at her. How does that feel? She thought about it for a moment. The coffee cup turned in her hands. Strange, she said finally. Like something you've practiced your whole life for but always half believed would never actually happen. And now it's happening and you're not sure if you're relieved or something else. She took a sip of her coffee. I'm glad it's for something like this, though. Not a real war. Just some raiders who don't know what they're walking into. You're confident it will work, Oren said. I'm confident in the ship, she said. And I'm confident in Lou. He's the best we've had on the rotation in a long time. He grew up here. His dad was on the crew rotation before him. She paused. When you grow up knowing the ship is there and knowing your family has always been part of it, you take it seriously. It becomes part of who you are. On the other side of the bay, Lou Bassett looked up from the control panel and made a small gesture to his crew. One of them, a young woman with her hair pulled back and a flight suit that was slightly too large for her, moved to the entry hatch on Iron Reach's side and tapped a code into the panel beside it. The hatch opened with a sound that was half mechanical and half something older, a sound that belonged to 300 years of waiting being finally, quietly finished. Lou looked across the bay at Carla. She gave him a nod. He gave her one back. Then he looked at Oren. It was a brief look, just a moment, the kind of look that passes between people when something significant is about to happen and words are not the right tool for it. Oren nodded. He was not sure why. Lou nodded back and turned and walked through the hatch into his ship. The crew followed him in. 8 people, one by one, each of them carrying a small bag and moving with the quiet focus of someone walking from one part of their life into another. The last one in was the young woman who had opened the hatch. She paused at the entrance and looked back at the bay, at the amber lights and the bare rock walls and Carla and Oren standing together in the corner. Then she went inside. The hatch closed behind her with a sound that was very final and very right. Oren let out a breath he had not known he was holding. Tilde. The launch itself was not dramatic. That was what surprised him most about it. He had expected something louder, something with more visible force to it. But the bay was well designed, cut deep into the rock with a launch corridor angled outward toward open space, and the acoustic dampening was good enough that what he felt was mainly a change in pressure and a low vibration through the floor that lasted about 30 seconds and then stopped. On the sensor display on the bay's wall, a new contact signature appeared. Smaller than the Keth ships. Moving away from the station fast and clean. Carla was watching the display with the particular expression of someone who had been holding something carefully for a long time and was only now allowing themselves to look directly at it. Her coffee cup was empty and she was holding it with both hands anyway, not drinking, just holding. It flies, she said softly. You doubted it? Oren asked. No, she said. But there is a difference between knowing something will work and watching it work. She looked at the contact signature on the display. My grandmother would have loved to see this. Oren watched the display. Iron Reach was moving fast now, pulling ahead of the station's sensor range and into the open dark between the asteroid belt and the edge of the Harrow system's middle ring. The Keth fleet was still coming, still at their easy pace, still doing the math of raiders who believed they already knew the outcome. He thought about that math. 14 ships against a colony with no defense force. Easy numbers. Clean numbers. The kind of numbers that made a decision feel simple. He wondered when the Keth would first see Iron Reach on their sensors. He wondered what they would do with the numbers after that. Tilde. Commander Dolan had set up a small monitoring station in the administrative block, which was just a table with 3 screens on it and a chair and a communication link to Iron Reach and a second link to the Accord emergency channel that Oren had been using to send updates to his government. It was not fancy. It was exactly what it needed to be. Dolan was sitting at the table with a cup of something hot when Oren came in. He gestured at a second chair without looking up. Oren sat down. The 3 screens showed different things. One was the sensor display with all contact signatures. One was a text feed of communication traffic, mostly technical updates from Lou's crew as they ran final checks. The third was a video feed from a camera mounted on the outside of the station, showing the dark field of stars and, very faintly in one corner, the glow of the gas giant at the edge of the system. It was 0349. Lou will be in position in about 20 minutes, Dolan said. He'll hold at the boundary of the Keth sensor range until the last possible moment and then move to intercept. What does intercept mean? Oren asked. Specifically. It means he'll put the ship between the Keth fleet and the station and open a communication channel. Dolan picked up his cup. Keth raiders use a standard threat and compliance protocol. They announce what they want, give a timer, and wait to see if anyone pushes back. If no one pushes back, they move in. He looked at the sensor display. Lou will push back. And if they don't stop? Dolan set his cup down and looked at the screen for a moment. That would be their choice, he said. There was something in the way he said it. Not a threat. Not anger. Just a flat, quiet statement of fact, the way a person states the existence of something that does not change regardless of how you feel about it. The sun rises. Water runs downhill. If the Keth fleet does not stop, that would be their choice. Oren added it to the mental list of things about humans that he was going to need a long time to fully understand. At 0408, Lou Bassett's voice came over the communication link. In position, he said. Keth fleet bearing confirmed. 14 contacts, consistent with initial report. They've seen us. How do you know? Dolan asked. They changed speed, Lou said. They slowed down and spread out a little. That's what you do when something unexpected shows up on your senses. You slow down and you look at it. Dolan nodded at the screen as if Lou could see him. Hold position. Wait for their communication. Holding, Lou said. The text feed on the second screen was moving now. Technical notes from the crew of Iron Reach. Weapon systems confirming hot, targeting array locked to the lead Keth vessel, drive at 50% for fast repositioning, shield showing full capacity. Oren read each line as it came in and tried to map it against everything he knew about ship combat, which was considerable. He had not served on a warship himself, but he had been briefed by people who had, many times. What he read in the text feed was not the status of an old mining colony ship pressed into reluctant service. It was the status of a combat-ready vessel being operated by people who knew exactly what they were doing. He had already revised his assessment of humanity several times in the past 3 days. He revised it again now, quietly, sitting in the dim administrative block with a cup of cold water and a sensor display that was telling him a very different story than the one he had been telling his government for 2 years. At 0421, the Keth fleet made contact. The translation software rendered the Keth communication in flat, functional language. It said, "You are in our approach path. Move aside or be destroyed. You have 1 hour. Dolan leaned forward. Lou, you have the response ready? Ready, Lou said. Send it. There was a pause of a few seconds. Then Lou's voice came back, not to Dolan but on the open channel that the Keth communication had come in on. He spoke slowly and clearly, because the translation software worked better that way. This is Commander Lou Bassett of the Colonial Defense Vessel Iron Reach. You are approaching a protected human installation. You are instructed to change course immediately. This is your only warning. If you continue on your current heading, we will stop you. The channel was quiet. Oren watched the sensor display. The Keth fleet had stopped its spread. The 14 contacts were holding position about 80,000 kilometers out. He could not read Keth behavior as well as human behavior, but he knew enough to recognize that a fleet that had been moving with confidence and purpose had just become a fleet that was doing something it had not expected to do. It was thinking. Tilde. The Keth response came 11 minutes later. It was shorter than the first message. It said, "You are 1 ship. We are 14. Move." Lou did not answer immediately. On the communication link to the station, his voice came through calm and even, the voice of a man running an ore processing line, the voice of a man who had been doing this rotation for 8 years and knew the material better than almost anyone alive. Commander Dolan. Do I have clearance to demonstrate? Dolan looked at Oren for a moment. Not for permission. Just acknowledging that there was a witness in the room, someone from outside, someone whose government would eventually write reports about this night. Then he looked back at the screen. Clearance granted, he said. On the sensor display, Iron Reach moved. It moved the way old things moved when they had been very carefully maintained, which was to say it moved perfectly, with none of the hesitation that age might have introduced if the maintenance had been anything less than exact. The ship crossed 50,000 kilometers in under a minute, cutting across the front edge of the Keth formation in a wide arc that put it briefly between 2 of the lead ships before pulling away clean and fast. The Keth ships scattered slightly, the way ships scatter when something moves through their formation at a speed they had not calculated for. Then Iron Reach fired. Not at any of the Keth ships. At nothing. At the open space between the Keth formation and the station, far from any vessel, a demonstration with no target. The weapon that fired was not one Oren recognized. It was not energy-based in any way he could categorize. What it did to the space it hit was leave a scar on his sensor display for about 4 seconds, a bright and complicated scar that his equipment took a long moment to process and then filed under a classification he had not seen used since the last Sethani war games, a classification reserved for weapons that were not supposed to exist in the hands of a provisional member civilization. The Keth fleet stopped moving entirely. Lou's voice came over the link. Demonstration complete. Thank you, Lou, Dolan said. He picked up his cup again. His hands were steady. Oren stared at the sensor display. What was that weapon? He asked. His voice was steady too, but only because he was concentrating on making it so. Dolan considered for a moment. The same consideration as before, the man deciding how much to say. We call it a compression driver, he said. The physics are complicated. The effect isn't. It compresses a column of space to about 1/10 of its normal volume for roughly 4 seconds. He paused. We've been working on it since about 2180. It took a while to get right. Oren thought about what it would do to a ship that was inside that column of space. He decided not to think about it for too long. The Accord, he said carefully, has treaty provisions regarding weapons development among provisional member civilizations. I know, Dolan said. He did not say anything else. Oren looked at him. The treaty provisions were established in 2301, he said. Humanity made first contact in 2271. That's right, Dolan said. The compression driver development started in 2180. That's right. Which means it predates the treaty. Dolan looked at him steadily. Which means it predates the treaty, he confirmed. Oren sat back in his chair. He thought about the assessment protocols the compact used. He thought about the questionnaires and the site visits and the technology audits and the 11 years of reports that had built up a picture of humanity as a young, developing, slightly behind civilization with a modest military presence and no significant weapons development outside of standard accepted categories. He thought about what a civilization that had been developing alone for 200 years, before anyone else knew they existed, before any treaties applied to them, before any galactic community had the authority to ask them what they were building, might have had time to develop. He thought, we have been asking the wrong questions, and we have not been asking nearly enough of them. The Keth fleet turned around at 0447. It did not do so quickly. The contacts on the sensor display shifted slowly, one at a time, the way a group of people left a room when they had decided to leave but did not want to look like they were hurrying. The war barges took longer to turn than the attack craft. For about 10 minutes, the formation was untidy, pointing in different directions, and Oren watched it with the particular attention of someone who was not sure whether something bad was about to happen. Nothing bad happened. The formation finished its turn and moved away from the station, accelerating toward the edge of the system, toward the point where they would spin up their drives and leave and not come back. Lou Bassett's voice came over the link at 0451. They're running, he said. There was nothing triumphant in it. Just the plain fact. Confirmed, Dolan said. Come home, Lou. On our way. Carla Webb came into the administrative block at 0455. She had clearly not slept, but she looked alert and there was something light in her expression that had not been there during the long preparation days. She looked at the sensor display and watched the Keth contacts moving away from the station and said nothing for a moment. Then she said, good. Just that. One word. And then she sat down in the corner and closed her eyes, and Oren thought that was probably the most honest response to the whole night that he had heard from anyone. Iron Reach came back into the bay at 0620. The lights were still amber. The station's day cycle had technically started, but no one had changed the lighting, and the effect was that the whole lower level felt like it existed slightly outside of normal time, in some space where the usual rules were suspended. Oren stood at the entrance to the bay and watched the ship come in. The docking was smooth. Lou Bassett clearly knew the bay dimensions well, because he brought the ship in without any of the minor course corrections that usually marked the end of a long run, just a clean and confident approach and a settling of the hull onto the bay floor that was almost quiet. The hatch opened. The crew came out. 8 people, the same 8 who had gone in 4 hours ago. They looked tired. They looked the way people looked when they had done something serious and were now returning to the ordinary world and finding that the ordinary world was still there, unchanged, waiting for them. Lou was last out. He stopped in the hatch for a moment and looked back into the ship, the way you looked back at a room you were leaving that you had strong feelings about. Then he came down the steps and Carla was there and she put her arms around him for a moment and said something in his ear that Oren did not catch and could not have heard even if he had tried. Dolan was there too, standing a little apart. When Lou came over to him, they shook hands. Not the formal handshake of commanders exchanging official business. The handshake of 2 people who had known each other a long time and had just shared something that did not need words. Oren stood at the edge of all this and watched and felt, for the first time since he arrived at Reach Station 9 6 weeks ago, that he understood where he was. Not a mining colony. Not a small human installation in the outer ring of an unremarkable system. Something else. Something he did not have an existing word for. He would have to find one. His next report was going to need it. He wrote the report in his quarters over the following 2 days. It was the longest report he had ever submitted to the compact, and the hardest to write, because it required him to say things that contradicted 11 years of official assessments and 200 years of standard galactic assumptions about humanity. He rewrote the opening 4 times. He was not someone who rewrote things 4 times. He was someone who thought carefully, wrote clearly, and submitted. This one was different. The final version began, everything we believe about the human military position is based on what they chose to show us. We have never once asked what they did not choose to show. This report is my attempt to explain what happens when the right question is finally asked. He spent a full day describing Iron Reach. The age of the hull. The quality of the maintenance. The crew who had trained on a rotation for 8 years, whose father had trained before him, whose grandmother had trained before that. He described the launch bay cut into the bottom of the asteroid. He described the 3 other ships in the station below the colony, their lights off and their hulls dusty, waiting their turn in a rotation that had been running since before anyone alive was born. He described the 19 other stations in the Harrow system that Dolan had mentioned, and noted that he had not yet been given any information about what was in them, or how many ships, and that his estimate was therefore conservative. He described the compression driver, its classification in the Accord's weapons registry, and the fact that its development predated the treaty that would have required its disclosure. He wrote, "I want to be clear that I do not believe any of this was done with malicious intent. The humans at Reach Station 9 are not hiding things because they want to deceive the galactic community. They built what they thought they needed, maintained it with great care and commitment, and waited to see if anyone would ask about it. No one asked. This is not their failure. It is ours." He read that paragraph 3 times before he left it in. He then spent a second full day writing the harder section of the report, the section that dealt with implications. Because the Harrow system was one system. Humanity controlled 11 inhabited systems and 6 deep space installations and had been in contact with the galactic community for 116 years. He had no data on any of the other systems. He had no way to know whether what he had seen in Harrow was representative or exceptional. He had no way to know how many Iron Reaches were sitting in the dark under how many colonies, being maintained by how many generations of rotating crew who had grown up knowing the ship was there and taking it seriously because it was a tradition and because it was part of the deal. He wrote, "My professional estimate, based on 6 weeks of observation and the pattern of what I have seen here, is that we should assume Reach Station 9 is not an exception. The program described by Commander Dolan started in 2089. It has been running for nearly 300 years. There are 11 human systems. If the program was applied consistently, and the maintenance discipline I observed here is any indication, the consistent application is very likely, then the military capacity of humanity is not what any of our assessments have described. I would recommend a formal and comprehensive disclosure request at the highest diplomatic level, approached with the understanding that we are not asking humanity to explain a discrepancy. We are asking them to help us understand something we should have asked about a very long time ago." He filed the report and sat quietly in his quarters for a while. On the morning of his last day at Reach Station 9, before his transport arrived to take him back to compact space, Oren went to the lower bay one more time. Iron Reach was back to how it had been before the launch. The amber lights. The dust settling back in on the hull, the way dust always settled back in when things returned to stillness. The crew had done a post-mission inspection and everything had checked out, and now the ship was parked again, in the dark, in the rock, under the colony. He stood in the entrance to the bay for a long time without going in. He was not sure what he had come to do. He thought maybe he had come to look at it one more time and try to understand it better, the way you return to a piece of work that confused you and hoped that looking at it again would show you something you had missed. What he saw was still the same. An old ship in an old bay, doing what it had been doing for 300 years. Waiting. But it felt different now than it had when Dolan first brought him here. Before, it had felt strange and surprising, like a secret he had stumbled into. Now it felt like something else. It felt like the answer to a question that the galactic community had been too careless to ask, which was, what does a species become when it has 300 years to get ready in the dark, with no one watching, with no one setting the rules, with nothing but its own judgment and its own patience and its own quiet conviction that being ready was better than being surprised? Carla Webb found him there, the same way she had found him before, coming up beside him without announcing herself and standing quietly for a moment before speaking. "Heading out today?" she asked. "In a few hours," he said. They stood together in the entrance and looked at the ship. The dust on the hull. The old welds. The faded stencil letters that spelled out Iron Reach and below them the designation number that meant something to whoever had been in charge of the program in 2094 when they parked it here and went back up to the surface and built a colony on top of it and began, quietly and without ceremony, a tradition. "What will you tell them?" Carla asked. "In your report." "The truth," he said. She nodded. "Will they believe you?" He thought about that seriously. "At first, probably not," he said. "It is a large thing to change your mind about. When you have believed something for a long time, the new information has to work hard before it wins." He paused. "But eventually, yes. The sensor data alone will be hard to argue with." "And then what happens?" she asked. He looked at Iron Reach. At the way it filled the bay. At the way it had moved on the sensor display, clean and fast and perfectly maintained. At what the compression driver had done to the space between the Keth fleet and the station, and at the way the Keth fleet had turned around without another word. "I think," he said slowly, "there will be a great number of meetings. There will be requests for information and formal disclosure processes and emergency sessions of the Accord Council. There will be a period of considerable discomfort for a lot of very important people who will have to explain to their governments why they did not know about this sooner." He paused. "And then I think there will be a long and serious conversation about the fact that humanity has been in the galactic community for 116 years and everyone has been talking to them and trading with them and assessing them, and none of us ever once sat down and said, 'We would like to understand everything you built before we met you.'" Carla looked at him. "That's a fair question to ask," she said. "It is," he agreed. "It should have been asked a long time ago." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We would have answered it. We always would have answered it. We don't have anything to hide. We just have a lot of things nobody thought to ask about." "I know that now," Oren said. They stood in the entrance to the bay for another few minutes. The ship waited in the dark the way it had always waited, patient and capable and completely indifferent to the size of the moment that surrounded it. It was just a ship doing what ships did, which was exist and be ready and wait for the people who needed them to come and ask. Oren said goodbye to Carla Webb and Commander Dolan and Lou Bassett, who was already on shift in the ore processing center, and shook Oren's hand with a grip that was firm and quick, and then turned back to his work. He said goodbye to the station in the way that you said goodbye to a place that had changed how you thought, which was quietly, and mostly inside yourself. On the transport back to compact space, he opened his personal log and looked at the entries he had made over the past 8 days. The first one from the night the Keth appeared, 3 words, "They know something." The one from the night before the launch, "We have been asking the wrong questions." The one from the morning after, sitting in the administrative block reading the sensor data, "We have been asking the wrong questions, and we have not been asking nearly enough of them." He sat with those entries for a while. Then he opened a new one. He wrote, "What I was really watching, the whole time I was there, was not a secret weapon or a hidden fleet or a trap being sprung on people who were not paying attention. What I was watching was 300 years of ordinary people making an ordinary decision, over and over, generation after generation, which was simply this, that it was better to be ready than to be sorry. They did not build Iron Reach because they were afraid. They built it because they were sensible. They maintained it because they took pride in good work. They trained on it because they believed the people who came after them deserved to inherit something that worked. And they waited, without complaint or impatience, because the thing they had built was for a day that might come or might not, and the waiting was part of the job." He looked at what he had written. Then he added one more line, "I think the galaxy has been underestimating them since the beginning, and I think the galaxy is about to find out what that means." He saved the entry and closed the log and looked out the viewport at the stars going past. Behind him, growing smaller with distance, was a small iron rock at the edge of a dust belt. Under the rock, in a bay cut from ancient stone, a dark ship rested with its lights off and its systems on standby, ready for the next time it was needed. The dust was settling back onto its hull. The crew was back on shift in the mines. The children in the school were arguing about the rules of a game. Everything was quiet. Everything was ready.